All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Prep for Impact, a new podcast from the Green Beret Foundation. I'm your host, Matt Parrish, and today I've got a phenomenal guest. I've got Pro Bowler and Super Bowl champion Ryan Jensen. He's the current starting center for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, you know, there's a lot of different similarities in between pro athletics and special operations and military careers. And what I really enjoyed and what I think you'll enjoy from this conversation today is Ryan's not one of those guys where things were just handed to him. He wasn't, the biggest, strongest, fastest dude of all time, first rounder, guaranteed starter. He had a lot of adversity to overcome throughout different stages of his career, including a really catastrophic knee injury last year that sidelined him pretty much for the entire year, from training camp all the way into the playoffs. And so we talk a lot about his overcoming adversity, his resilience, coming up in Colorado, going ultimately into the NFL. But we also talk about some of the, intricacies of having the greatest quarterback of all time join your team. And then now going into this season, sort of the year after Tom Brady. So it's an awesome opportunity to listen to somebody that's at the top of their game and hear some of those comparisons and some of the things that we can learn from somebody else's perspective. And so I really think you're going to enjoy this episode of Prep for Impact.
Boys, look alive. We're coming in hot. All stations. Prep for Impact.
All right, hey everyone, welcome back to Prep for Impact. As you heard, we got a phenomenal guest for you today, Ryan Jensen. Ryan, thanks for coming in, man. It's good to see you back in Tampa. I know you've been out back in Colorado. How you been so far?
Yeah, it's been good. I've been back here in Tampa for a couple of weeks now, getting used to this heat. It's a little different than Colorado, where it's a beautiful 75 every day and all that. But it's great to be back. It's great to be on the show. I appreciate you.
No, thanks for we had a chance for any of you who didn't listen to Softcast. We had a chance. I got you for like 10 minutes coming off of the field on training camp. It was windy as all could get out, and but it was awesome to be able to have a quick chance to chat. So I knew when we were starting this one, I was like, man, that's a guy I want to be able to have a longer conversation with. There's a ton of things I want to discuss, but I think let's start with like growing up in Colorado. Was football the thing? Did it become the thing? How did you kind of get vectored into sports and everything like that?
Yeah, definitely. So sports for me has been a lifetime thing.
Sure.
I started playing t-ball as itty bitty 5-year-old, 4-year-old, soccer. Started playing full contact tackle football in second grade, which I think is way too early for kids to be playing. If I'm going to advocate for anything, I'd say probably don't let your kids play tackle football until they're a little bit older.
I'm going to show my son who's 5 right now. I'm going to show him like, hey, Ryan Jensen said, play flag football for a couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of a running joke. It's gonna be hard to do this because my son, he wants to play football too. He's 6 or about to be 6 in November, and we have a rule that he's not allowed to play until 7th grade. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how long we can fight that one off. I played sports my entire childhood. Did martial arts as well. Did taekwondo. Was a two-time national medalist in the Junior Olympics for sparring in 1999 or it was 2000. I can't remember exact years. I was 8 and 10. Took a silver medal and a bronze medal in nationals in the Junior Olympics. My dad, my mom, we owned our own martial arts studio and taekwondo studio. My dad was a 5th degree black belt. My mom's a 3rd degree black belt. So definitely ran in the family.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was I want to say normal athletic childhood, growing up playing sports. And so football for me was, came natural.
Sure. Your older brother was a big football guy too.
Yes, right? my brother, he'll be 30. I'm 32. He'll be 36 this year. Here in September. And always looking up to him playing. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Mm-hmm. Could have gone to any Power 5 school he wanted. He ended up going to Nebraska. Yeah. Unfortunately, fought a bunch of injuries and cut his career pretty short. It was for me. I never thought football was going to be my thing, just because I was always kind of the smaller kid. Graduating high school. I say small.
in comparison to NFL linemen.
In comparison to where I'm at now, I graduated high school at 215 pounds.
Yeah.
So, through college, I gained a bunch of weight. Throughout 4 years, I gained almost 100 pounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, baseball was always my favorite sport growing up. I loved baseball.
What position?
I did a little bit of everything. I was a really good catcher and played first base, and I had a cannon, so I played outfield too.
Yeah.
But I did a little bit of everything. I think coming from a small town, you always kind of play a bunch of different positions.
I think it's better anyway. There's so many people now that I think there was a part there where a lot of people were like really trying to specialize their kids, and now it seems like there's a movement to try to get back to like being well-rounded, playing different things, because there's kids that are getting burned out in 13, 14 years old,
100%,
and they're playing travel ball since the time they're like our kid, our son's age. And it's like, you got to be able to run around and do something different, I think.
Yeah, I'm against specializing your kids in sports at an early age. They need to be out there doing a bunch of other stuff. There's so many different athletic movements from basketball to baseball to football to soccer that all to track. That's great for development of their motor skills, but also it gives them an opportunity to get away. Maybe they love baseball and baseball's their thing, but a 10-year-old shouldn't be playing baseball 10 months out of the year. 11 months out of the year. They need a break. And
there's different cognitive, strategic things between each game, right? There's different, your teamwork is a little bit different in football than it is in baseball.
100%.
I mean, they're going to get teamwork either way, but I think there's different things that just kind of, build into a complete, human. Most of the really great professional baseball, basketball, football players played other sports when they were younger. And I think we just got into this thing where everybody was trying to get their kid to whatever league.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, it's easy for me to say, my kids are just starting that, but it's like, man, I want to widen them out a little bit and have them be able to do some other things. Were you always growing up during that time, were you a center, or did you start to specialize when you got to Colorado Pueblo, or was it like?
Yeah, so I always played a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I was a smaller kid.
Yeah.
I went through these stages. I always joke around because my nephew's going through the same thing right now. He's 12, but he'll get really chunky.
Yeah,
and then he'll shoot
Stretch
up.
Out.
He'll shoot up, get really skinny, gets kind of chunky again, then shoots up again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thing. I'd go through phases of 1 year maybe I was playing a running back or tight end or whatever, and then the next year I was playing O-line, and then fast forward 2 years and I'm playing. So for me it was like I kind of went through these stages of being a bigger kid, then back to being kind of a lean kid and all that. So for me, I always played O-line, D-line, linebacker. Growing up through little league, through middle school and high school. It was mainly offensive lineman, defensive lineman. Played a little bit of linebacker in high school, but my senior year, I played guard and played D end and three technique on defense. So for me, it's just that ability to be able to play multiple positions, which is kind
versatility,
of what led to me in my first 4 years in the NFL, where I was kind of on a trajectory of being a career backup, which there's nothing wrong with that. You make a great living doing that, but my ability to play multiple positions across the line helped keep me on a roster.
You always want that sixth or seventh dude that whoever goes down can plug a hole and knows what he's doing.
That guy, especially in offensive line play, where you have one guy that gets injured or goes down or leaves or whatever. You need that next guy to step in and have the operation be exactly the same and have no noticeable falter or noticeable issue within the line. So I think that goes along with kind of what we were talking about earlier with having the ability to play multiple sports. You learn how to play and do different things, which is, can lead to, being able to, as an NFL player, be able to stick on a roster for 4, 8, 10, however many years, because you got the versatility to play multiple positions and stuff like that.
Hey everyone, I'm proud to partner with the Green Beret Foundation for Prep for Impact because I've seen firsthand the work they do with Green Berets, their families, caregivers, and survivors. Across all of their pillars of support, they support Green Berets across casualty assistance, health and wellness, Gold Star and surviving family members, and Next Ridgeline transition support. I encourage you to visit greenberetfoundation.org for more information. Most tool companies try to be everything to everyone, but the result is just okay. That is why Spec Ops Tools focuses on two main goals:
designing and building the best hand tools available, and supporting veterans in every capacity they can. You can have the most elite hand tools while doing good for veterans nationwide with Spec Ops Tools. Check them out today at specopstools.com.
Yeah, we see the same thing on ours. Like if you're on a special forces team, right? There's guys that get really specialized, like, hey, I'm really good at this one part of my job, or I'm the sniper or whatever else. And it's great. Like you should be at a very high level of whatever that team needs you to do. But there's a lot of us that were able to kind of be well-rounded and fill different holes in it. Like that's how I was able to stay on a team for 13 years. It was like, it wasn't like I'm just a one-trick pony and that's all I do. It was like, okay, hey, right now I'm on a mountain team, but I'm moving to a more like CQB room clearing, and I'm going to be a breacher. And then it's like, okay, hey, now I'm moving to a sniper team. Like I got to do it. So it's very similar in like having those well-rounded skills and realizing like, okay, yes, I want to be super good at whatever the season is right now, right? Like right now I'm on a sniper team. I want to be really good at that, but I don't want that to be at the detriment of everything else. Like I've still got to be able to, if somebody else needs something, I can fill in. As you started going, obviously smaller college, right? You get there, you start playing football, you're doing well. At what point does the league seem like it's possible?
Yeah, so for me, it was about my junior year of college. My sophomore year, I was about 265, 270, and came in and, was All-American, won a bunch of awards, this and that. Go through my junior year, same thing. First team All-American on a couple different All-American teams, all Colorado team for, colleges and stuff like that. And so it's like my junior spring. So going into my senior season, it's like January-ish, right around there. We had a quarterback who's about 6'6", 6'7", big arm. Looks like a prototypical NFL quarterback. Had a couple scouts, like regional scouts, that were sitting in our film room watching him while I'm in like the study hall area. Not that I was studying, but
I was in the area.
I was in the area. And the computers went down in the team room, and the guy came and found me, and he's looking at me. He's like, "Are you 66 on film?" And I'm like, "Yeah, is this a trick question?" And he's like, "All right, shut the door real quick." And he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, you have a legit shot." He goes, "You go in and continue playing. You get a little bit bigger. You play at this level. Keep doing what you're doing at this level." He goes, "You're going to get invited to a camp."
Yeah, nice.
Because you're going to get invited to an NFL training camp, whether that's on a, at this rate, whether that's just a tryout,
practice
or a contract, a unrestricted free agent contract. He goes, "You're at least going to get that." So that was kind of eye-opening for me coming from a Division II school. So I went and talked to my O-line coach, who he coached TJ Lang, who was a 10-year NFL vet, played for Green Bay and Detroit. And, I talked to him. I just sat down. I'm like, "Listen, I need you to shoot me straight." Like, I go, can I do this? Can I make it to the NFL? I'm like, "Do I have what it takes?" And he just simply said yes. And I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "What do I need to do?" And so we got on the phone with my parents. He goes, "Hey, I legitimately think Ryan has an opportunity to make it to the NFL, but this is what he needs to do going into his senior year." And part of that was not having a job because, Division II, we didn't get a stipend. We didn't get this, this way before NIL deals and stuff like that. So I was working summer jobs to help pay for rent and pay for my schooling. And he goes, he doesn't need to work this.
He's got to go all in.
He's got to go all in, this and that, and which led to a conversation where coming out of high school, I was working for my uncle who owned a roofing company in northern Colorado. I was working 80 hours weeks with him going into college, saved all my money, and then bought a dirt bike for myself. Like I, bought my own dirt bike, and
heck yeah.
My parents would go, "Listen, come from a lower middle class family. We always had everything we needed, but they didn't have the cash to afford me to get me through, the summer." So they made a deal with me. They go, "Listen, if you're not going to work, you got to sell your dirt bike," which was like hard for me because I was like one of my first big purchases where I had to put in so much work to go and buy this thing that I absolutely loved. They go, "You're going to have to sell your dirt bike." And went and sold my dirt bike for $3,500, got me through the summer, and all of a sudden scouts are showing up to practices, to games, to this and that. And, having these conversations with these scouts, and it's like, okay, this is a legitimate shot. I remember my first game of my senior year, I had like 12 different teams that were at the first opening game against West Texas A&M, which is a pretty, I don't know how they're doing anymore, but at that time was like a powerhouse Division II school. Yeah. And I'm like, holy cow, like this is like a legitimate shot, and going through all that. And then, obviously getting drafted in the 6th round by Baltimore in 2013, pick 203. It was just like this accumulation of hard work and trust. Yeah. And
going all in, being committed.
And just like that, just full jumping in and saying, you know what, this is what it's going to be. If I'm going to be presented with this opportunity, you just got to take it to the full extent and take advantage of it as much as you can.
No, it's phenomenal. I mean, there's so many different things that people try to like dip their toe into, and then they wonder why they didn't ultimately end up successful, right? And it's like, I've had a lot of folks now from being a Green Beret and being up in rank and everything, guys from the outside, like talking about wanting to go to selection or whatever it is. And it's the same thing. It's like, hey man, if you want it, like you got to commit. You need to train for 6 to 12 months and be all into this. And if you show up halfway, like don't bother coming. Yeah. Right. And so it's the same thing there. It's like, when I got to sell like my prized possession dirt bike, I got to get after this thing. But obviously now 100% make that sacrifice again, right?
100%. Yeah. That's like the biggest thing is there's so many people that I think it's just this day and age with the kids, especially, college kids now with like the NIL deals with all this, they get catered to for their entire, we're talking like 7th to 8th graders now that are signing with agents, which is just crazy to me to think like, me at 14 years old.
I was going to say, you ever think about if the transfer portal and NIL and all that would have been like how much different it would have been?
Yeah, and it's just crazy. Like, but then all these kids are getting catered and getting told how great they are at such a young age that as soon as there's adversity that comes up, like a lot of these kids don't know how to mentally and emotionally jump that hurdle of, okay, well maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Right. That collapses a lot of kids, a lot of people.
Sure.
Where the people that really want it, whenever they get to a point where they're like, okay, maybe I'm not that good, but I want it more, they take that next step in their emotional maturity
resilience
and their resiliency. And they say, screw this, like this isn't where I want to be. And they take that next step, that leap of faith, saying, I'm going all in because this is what I believe I can be. And, obviously it doesn't always work out. Like that's just it's not for everybody. That certain niche of whatever isn't always for everybody. But if you can go in and give your best, you never know what the results are gonna show. And that's just kind of how I've lived my entire career. Being a late round draft pick. My rookie year, my second day of training camp, I break my foot. Second year,
I was about to ask about it.
My second year in the NFL with the Ravens, I get cut, and I'm on practice squad, wanting to quit. Yeah. Like I remember up a tackle for loss that ended up breaking Justin Forsett's arm. I trapped Aaron. He fell behind our left tackle. Our left tackle fell on Joe Flacco's knee, tore his ACL. Like talk about a
calamity of errors, like everything going wrong.
Everything going wrong, and what you think is going to be your opportunity.
The coming
out party. And that's what happens. Oof. We end up winning the game, which is great. But, we have all these like crazy things, turn of events happen in the season. But again, it was the same thing. It's like all it did was piss me off more and made me focus and take that mentality of that you're not good enough mentality and shoving it where the sun don't shine of everybody that's ever said that. So that's just kind of like that mentality that I've always played with that that chip on my shoulder.
No, I love it. I mean, that was one of the main reasons, like when I started, kind of learning about your career and all that stuff, I'm like, man, that to me is so much more inspiring. It's like, there's some of these guys, they're so, God-gifted talent and they work hard, but some of them, it's like they haven't had to have those like moments of somebody spitting in their face, basically being like, well, just quit. Or, hey, you're on the practice squad, you're done. Or, hey, you're going to have to sell your dirt bike. And it's like, it's amazing when you look at an NFL roster, how many guys are like small school dudes who just like man, put it all on the line. And now, I mean, there's guys, even if you're on the practice squad for 5-6 years, I mean, that's an incredible feat to be able, with the amount of people that play football and want to be, running out there on a Sunday just to be on a sideline. It's pretty incredible. How did you feel, going into the Ravens? It's like a tough, hard-nosed team. Like, that's one of those, Steelers, Ravens, whatever. It seemed like it kind of plays to your, like, mean streak of coming in. When you did start to see success, like, tell me about how that felt coming out of, like, okay, I had my first game and it was just like crater. It's only up from here, right? And then as you started to kind of settle into the league, how did that feel coming through this whole journey?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy journey for me.
Yeah.
People always think, I was a day one starter, coming into the NFL, like you're this, you're that, you're really good, yada, yada, yada. I don't listen to all that stuff. That's just noise. But a lot of people don't realize that, I wasn't a full-time starter until my 5th year in the league. Yeah. And so my 3rd year in the league, I get my first start, absolutely goes to hell in a handbasket. And this, then I start the next game. The regular starter came back for the next 2 games. He was kind of up and down injured. And then I ended up starting the last 6 games of the season. So I'm starting to set this foundation, like, okay, I can be this guy day in and day out, or week in and week out in the NFL. Yeah. And then, going into my 4th year and my exit interviews, after my 3rd year, like, hey, we're going to give you a legit opportunity to compete for a starting position next year. Yeah. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm balls to the walls that off season, getting ready to play, compete for the left guard spot. We end up drafting a left guard in the 2nd round. Well, with anything, when you invest money in a high draft pick, guess
not to sit on the bench.
They're not. You're not drafting a 2nd rounder to have them sit on the bench. And it was one of those things where I didn't even I went from the potential of being in the competing spot for, the starting left spot in Baltimore to essentially getting that completely ripped away from me. I get thrown over to the right guard, which is fine. Like, again, like I made.
How's that feel on draft night when you see, because you're just sitting there, you're like, you're busting your ass trying to make sure you're ready for this. And you're like, and Baltimore selects, and you're like, left guard, what, Yeah.
So no, it's definitely it can be disheartening.
Sure.
I remember same thing going into my 3rd year. We drafted a kid in like the 3rd or 4th round. I remember texting my mom. I said, "Oh, well, it's been fun, Baltimore." Like, just kind of joking around because I'm like, they just drafted my replacement. Yeah. Yeah. Like that's what they were doing. And like my position as a swing guy, they draft a high guard. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, there's one position that's already pretty much spoken for, and you start doing the math. You're like, oh, well, we don't need 3-4 guards. We need a couple more tackles. So, but, motivated. I ended up beating that guy out for over the roster spot. Yeah. He ended up being on P squad. But yeah, so like going into my 4th year, I had this, like, this treat dangled in front of my face saying, hey, you're going to have the potential to be a shot to be the starter, and then it just gets completely ripped out and change plans, which is fine. Just adapt. Yeah, and it
wasn't the first time you'd been.
It's not the first
knocked
time.
down.
Yeah. So that was awesome. And I ended up starting 4 or 5 games my 4th year, but right before the bye week, one of our guys got hurt, and my O-line coach at the time was like, hey, if he can't come back, you're going to be the starter the rest of the year. I'm like, sweet. Okay. Like, I'm ready. Let's do this thing. Well, we go into bye week and he's done for the year. Like, he tore his rotator cuff up really bad and he wasn't going to be able to play. So I come in to work on that Monday, getting ready to be the guy.
Take the role.
To be the guy. Yeah. And I come in and we had signed a kid off the street, a veteran off the street to come in just to we need another guy. Yeah. Well, he just stair steps all of us and becomes the starter. And I'm inactive on game day the rest of the year with no explanation.
Wow.
which is just was crazy to me. I was going into an unrestricted free agent year, so I know what they were doing. I was playing pretty well. They were trying to hide me. They didn't want
the value.
They didn't want another team to come in and give me an offer sheet that they had to match or whatever. It's the game. That's the politics and the business side of it. It sucks.
Yeah,
but so I'm sitting the entire rest of that season, and the mental warfare that goes on with that. All of a sudden, you're not good enough. You're not this guy. You're not going to be him. You're never going to be this guy.
Well, it's such a finite amount of time that you can do this.
Yeah.
To have oh man, part of my prime, I'm not there.
Yeah,
it's got to be terrible.
It was one of those things that felt like I was getting money taken out of my pocket.
Yeah.
I was getting robbed.
Yeah.
But
and you still have to show up and
go to work and do this. And that's what it felt like to me. And I remember, my exit interview, I was like, I don't want you guys to put a tender on me. I want you guys to let me be unrestricted so I can go find a team that's actually going to allow me to be compete and compete for a starting spot. And they obviously put a tender on me, which ended up being a really great blessing because I came into the next year in my 5th year and became the starting center. And as they say, the rest is history. Started all 16 games, signed a massive deal down here in Tampa, and have been here ever since. And there's this adversity in life is just one of those things. It's like you can let it define you, or you can define it. I'm going through my 4th year. All of a sudden, I get the rug pulled out from underneath me with no explanation. That can break a lot of people. And it broke me for a while. I was so angry and upset and just mad because there was no explanation behind it. Where when I felt like I was playing well, other guys on the team were like, "Why are you not starting?" I'm like, I don't know. When you have your teammates are like, "Why aren't you the guy?"
It's so tough not to turn into a toxic teammate at that point and have resentment and let it splash on the other people on the team. That's so tough.
Exactly. And it's just one of those things you just got to kind of eat it, and all that. But going from that to where I'm at now, and then obviously last year, it's all this adversity led up to real true adversity. Not saying that wasn't true adversity, but then
this past year,
we're coming up on a year of me dislocating my knee and tearing 3 ligaments and doing a bunch of damage to my knee. It was all these in retrospect, all that other stuff is just such a minor, petty adversity. And
at the time, it's the worst thing in the world. But you look back and you're like, God was prepping me because then I get to the part where I get really,
the adversity really comes and all that. So it's it's been quite the journey. That's for sure.
Spec Ops Tools is a different breed of tool brand. They produce premium, innovative hand tools by leveraging the dynamic strengths of their veteran team and leadership. In addition to staffing vets, Spec Ops gives a part of every sale back to extremely worthy veteran service organizations. Producing elite tools is their business, and supporting American service members is their passion. Go check out Spec Ops Tools today. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying Prep for Impact, please consider supporting us through joining the 1952 Society from the Green Beret Foundation. With your ongoing monthly recurring donation, you can help the GBF support the ongoing and increasing needs of our Special Forces Regiment. To find out more and take the first step, visit greenberetfoundation.org/society.
Well, that's what I love. That's why, frankly, I want to have a podcast, right? Because you said a couple of key things in there that I think are so valuable. Because okay, if I'm listening to this, I may not be, on the cut line on an NFL team, right? But we're all going to get kicked in different ways, right? That's the whole point of why we call it Prep for Impact, right? It's being able to come back from an impact is just as important as the positive of I'm going to go make an impact, right? Mm-hmm. So in that time, what I loved what you said was acknowledging that there, it could break people, and it broke me for a little while, right? Because a lot of people I think from the outside are oh yeah, I get a lot with the special forces thing, oh well, you guys are just, you guys got this such a high level of resilience and whatever else. It's but there's times where you're still on that edge where you might go this way, that's the
thing about that, it sneaks up on you.
Oh yeah.
I remember about a month after I got injured, I come to the realization like, hey, like, there's potential that this, obviously my
last
season,
year you're talking about.
yeah, like my season's definitely over. And, then we're not sure this might end your career.
Yeah.
And, if I come to like that realization, it was about a month, 6 weeks after I got injured. And, me and my wife went out to a movie and, we went and watched Top Gun. It just came out. It was great. Yeah. And we're driving home. She's driving, and I'm just like sitting here, and I'm like, I look over, and I'm like, hey, thanks. I really needed that. Like, I need to have diversion, some fun, and all that did for me was just it opened up an opportunity to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
strengthen the relationship with your wife.
And it was just like, it went from like pure joy to be just going to a movie to now I'm sobbing in the car because all of this emotion that I'd been just packing down about my injury. Yeah. I'd let it out a couple times, but like this one was like one of those like deep, like belly cries.
Oh,
and going through all those fears, there's such a big misconception as men, especially that we have to be these big tough guys. Sure. And there's definitely times where
at least on the outside you try to be
on the outside you got to be that tough guy. You got to lead your family, you got to lead your guys, and you can't show that little bit of weakness, but at the same time, like, it's healthy, it's okay to go to your wife, go to your best friends, your true friends. I always talk to the young guys when they come in about what's the most important for them. I said, you need to get 3 or 4 dudes that you can trust with anything, that are just not going to be yes men. Like you need guys that
speak truth,
that are going to speak truth, that tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
100%.
And that's hard because there's going to be times where these guys come in, they just kick you in the nuts. And it's like, you don't want to hear that right now, but it's exactly what you needed to hear. So having a group of guys, having somebody who you can go to and just honestly be vulnerable and be open to is such it's a hard thing to learn.
There's so much overlap in that to like our careers in special forces and being on a team. And I used to, as when I got to be a team sergeant, I was a senior guy and I was in charge of a team, I would tell our young guys similar stuff. I'm like, hey man, if somebody thinks enough of you and loves you enough to come and tell you something you're doing wrong, you are immediately going to get defensive. Like everybody does. Like try to shut that down, absorb it. Don't get in an argument about what they said. Take a day, take a night, whatever, think through it, because there's got to be some truth in there somewhere. And if you still really disagree the next day, well, like come back, pull that person aside and be like, hey man, I don't agree, whatever, but like don't push those people away when they're trying to give you real feedback, because they might end up being like the best thing that happened to you. Because you need that network of other strong men who are going to, specifically for us, other strong men who are going to come in and be like, hey man, I think you're going this way. Or, hey man, you think you're here and you don't realize like, everybody else sees this and you see this. Right. And so it's amazing. I was so like, man, I was so upset for you because I had been through so many similar like injuries with neck surgeries and all this stuff, and had been at that point multiple times. Like when you're telling me about that, I feel it so much from being towards the end of my career and having multiple neck surgeries and thinking like, okay, am I just completely done? Like, and having those moments you just completely break down. And I remember we had at training camp, we had jumped into that military appreciation day, and it was like right after that, you tore your knee. Yeah, it was like the next day, and I was like, could not believe. And so, when that happens, right? I guess we'll back up in a minute and talk about TB12 coming in and how it all of a sudden goes to like the pinnacle. You win the Super Bowl, you're in the Pro Bowl, all these things. And now all of a sudden you get the worst injury you've had. Coming back from that is not a like, oh, I'm going to set my mind tomorrow and I'm coming back. That is a whole year. I mean, you ended up being able to come back for the wild card game, which is incredible. But during that time, how were you able to still invest in your teammates? Because I saw, like, I was on the sideline for a few of those games, and I saw you out there, like, pumping those dudes up, and it motivated me because I'm like, man, I know how hard that is to not be able to do the thing you love, but still try to be a good teammate. Can you talk to me about that whole kind of last season?
Yeah, it was tough. Just because my whole story, like I had to work so hard to get to this point where I'm the head of the room. I'm the leader. I'm this guy. And then, an injury, and all of a sudden now
feels like getting knocked off the top of the mountain back down.
Yeah. You're continuously climbing up this ladder. But for me, it was just, I saw opportunity to be a leader in the aspect of a couple of the young guys on the team who I see very similar career paths that I had. Yeah. Kind of just that 8th, 9th guy in the room. Yeah. Here's a spot start here, spot start there. So for me, it was just the ability to still try to be a leader in an aspect of things where it's hard when you're not out there fighting your ass off, trying to help, on the field, and then somebody comes off the field and you got to kind of jump them a little bit. It's like, you don't want to be that guy that's not out there fucking fighting your ass. Sorry, I'm not supposed to share. I'm supposed to cuss. You're good. Not out there, not fighting alongside them, but they're coming off the field and I'm not necessarily critiquing. I'm critiquing them, but I'm trying to motivate them. Like, hey, like, this is what
you're trying to be the dude that we talked about, right? You're trying to be that guy who's telling them what they need to hear.
Yeah.
But that's tough.
And it's tough, especially in a situation like that where you learn, because it's different when you're in it, when you're out there fighting and you come off the field and things aren't going right. Like you can kind of you can cuss your dudes
because you're all in it together.
Because you're all in it together. Well, when you're the guy that's on the outside, but you've done it for so many years, and you try to come in and say, "Hey, like, wake up, get your ass rolling. Like, what are we doing? You guys are playing like shit." Like being that guy when you're not the one out there fighting, because the simple fact is, like, the NFL, you're playing against the best of the best every week, and eventually you're going to get got. Everybody gets got. I don't care how good you are, how much money you make, how many Pro Bowls, how many All Pros. Like, eventually you're going to get got. That's just what it is in this league. So it's so for me, it was just wanting to help mold these young guys, and just for example, I remember. It was in 21, the year after we won the Super Bowl. I was playing, and Allie got a concussion. Allie got a concussion, and Stinney was starting in his place. We're down in Indianapolis, and Stinney ended up tweaking his knee or doing something. And Nick Leverett, who was like a third-year practice squad guy, he got elevated for that game. Nice. Now all of a sudden he's playing against a $23 million defensive tackle, and I just blanked his name, but gives up a sack to him. He's like mad, which is great. Like, you need to have someone. But then he's like negative self-talk. I'm like, I go, Nick, I go, I love you, man. I go, that dude makes $22 million a year. Like, he's going to get,
he's pretty good at it.
He's going to get his. That's just part of it. And the rest of the game, like, he went out and shut him down, locked him out. And it was fine. But it's that striving to be the best, which is great, but also understanding, like, again, there's going to be adversity in games and life and the day to day. There's going to be something. Not every day is perfect. There's some perfect days, there's some perfect games, but throughout the day, throughout the game, throughout the year, throughout the month, whatever, there's going to be little moments of self-doubt and adversity that you just gotta work through. You got to learn how to take it for what it is and build off that. So there's that's why they always say, football is like the greatest team sport ever. Because I truly believe that, because there's so many aspects. I mean, you have 11 guys on each side of the ball that have to be working in unison. And if one guy's not doing the right thing, that leads to a pick six, that leads to this, it leads to that, it leads to a sack, it leads to, like, trying to get 11 people on the same page is damn near impossible. You know what? It's in a team aspect of things like that. It's hard to get everybody on the same page and hold each other accountable. And that's what, you guys.
That's why I love it, because there's so many things. Like, for us, it's 12-person teams, right? It's 12-man teams, and it's the same thing. You're trying to figure out, everybody's got their own lives. They're at their own different parts in their careers, and it's so similar to some of those things to try to get everyone bought in and doing all the right things, and being in the right mindset all the time. It's just so tough. And similar things, man. One decision, one turn to the left when you should have turned to the right, can have huge,
for sure.
And it's wild. I had a very similar situation towards the end of my career where I was injured. I was having, a couple more surgeries, and I was in the point you were at last year where it was like, man, I'm having to talk to these dudes, and I'm used to leading from the front and saying, okay, we are going to do this, and having to be like, hey man, you need to do this. And I felt so terrible. I resonate so much with that because it felt like I was that guy in the stands throwing stuff. And it's like, no man, I'm like, I've done it. I want you to do well at it, but it's so tough. We talk so many things about the adversity because that's what I think most of us as professionals, we think about the times that we had to overcome. Mm-hmm. But you've had some awesome kind of on the other side, triumphs. How I'm always curious is you come in, now you're a starting, you've signed this big contract, Tampa Bay, you come down here, you're doing well, and all of a sudden, the most famous, best quarterback of all time suddenly decides hey, I'm coming to Tampa. And not only are you sort of on the team, you're his center, mm-hmm. right? How did that feel? Did you had any contact with him? Did you know him at all before you guys hooked up as far as being on a team?
No, so I think most people, I didn't like him.
Yeah. Hey, I grew up an Atlanta Falcons fan, so 28-3, he's got half my heart already.
Yeah. So everybody hates a winner.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just the way.
And he's so good at everything, right?
Yeah,
so
he's successful at what he does. He's just one of those guys that seems like he can't do anything wrong. But no, so it was kind of funny going into that whole process of, the last person I ever thought I was going to be snapping a football to when I signed down here in Tampa was Tom Brady. Yeah. But I remember kind of when all the rumors started speculating, hey, he kind of wants to go down to Tampa. Hey, he's in Tampa right now eating dinner with so-and-so. And I'm like, yeah, right. Okay, you're full of it. Then it starts gaining more traction. And I start digging and prying with some of my connections. And this is legitimate, And then obviously when he signs or, he commits to sign down in Tampa, he gives me a FaceTime and I'm like, I'm sitting in my recliner playing video games with no shirt on. And I got Tom Brady calling me. I'm like, because Jason, our GM, Jason Light, he texted me, he goes, hey, Tom's going to give you a call here in a minute. Yeah. Is that okay? I'm like, what am I going to say?
No, Tom.
I don't got time for you right now. So I'm expecting just a phone call. I'm not expecting a FaceTime. So when all of a sudden I get a FaceTime, I'm like, oh, great. How's this going to go? But no, it was cool to see, with what BA had started to do in 19 when he got the job, change the culture of the locker room, start getting the right people in there. And then all of a sudden you add a guy like Tom who just immediately elevates people around him. Yeah. We've always had a talented team. Yeah. We've always had talented players. Yeah. We just have never, the first couple of years we didn't have that glue guy to really, make us what we could be. Yeah. When Tom signs,
and then so many people come with it because they want to play with him. So you got people signing on everywhere.
You got Gronk coming in, and then Lenny and all that. Yeah. But it was cool. And then obviously we have COVID and all that mess of that coming into that season, and then going and winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, it was
in the home stadium, incredible.
First year Tom's there. Yeah, it was wild, especially just how our season went. We were I think 9-7 going into the playoffs, and then we we ended up winning I think 7 or 8 games in a row to end the season. I think we won 8 games in a row or something like that
including
the playoffs. Yeah. And it was one of those moments. It was just holy crap. At that time I was in year 8. Yeah. And that's the pinnacle, go and win a Super Bowl.
I was going to say, how's that feel coming out in Ray J? It's your home stadium, but now it's the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
What's that moment like?
It was really cool. So for me, I'm always kind of the first one out of the locker room. Yeah. It's just my thing. After we do our team break, I'm always the first one out of the locker room. It's just what I do. It's just kind of that leading from the front type deal. And so my whole family's in the stands.
Sure.
My mom is recording, and it was funny because I talked to her a couple days later after I came out of my celebration, and it was just me and her just sitting there talking, and she goes, "I knew we were gonna win when I saw you come out of the locker room." I'm like,
nice.
I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You always come out with like juice and a little bit of like little swag." Yeah. She goes, "But when they open up the doors, and for whatever reason, I just got these little things I do. When I walk out the first door to the locker room, I punch the center post with open hand punch, with one hand, blocking, then walk out the other one and do the other hand. It's just one of my little pregame routines." She goes, "When I saw you come out and hit the post," she goes, "I just knew."
Yeah.
She goes, "I knew you
snapped it off the hinges."
She goes, I just knew you guys were gonna about to just run them out of the stadium," which we ended up doing. And so for me, it was kind of weird because of the whole fact that we, kind of blew them out. Yeah. Blew them out of the water.
Incredible. Yeah.
It didn't feel that special. Yeah. At first, it was like, wow, we just won the Super Bowl. I remember, I'm like, that was freaking cool. Yeah. I jump up in the stands, go give my mom a hug. Yeah. And for me, that the accumulation of all that work from that year, from the COVID to like our game's going to get canceled to this, to that, is about 15 beers deep on the boat
on the boat parade.
In the boat parade. I remember just sitting there. We just got over, I forget which bridge it was. It was one of the, we just went underneath one of the drawbridges and they had it up. Yeah. And I remember just like pausing for a second and like looking around.
Taking it in. Yeah.
And that was my moment. That was my like, we just won the Super Bowl moment. The accumulation of all this work, dreams as a kid, like, again, just started like crying out of like tears of joy, just seeing the hundreds of thousands of people that were lining the bay right there it was amazing. Yeah. It was just like watching. And I remember Tristan was standing right next to me. And I looked at him and it was kind of weird. We had the same moment at the same like time. It was one of those just like, we looked around, 3 sheets. Yeah. But then it was like, we took a moment away from like celebrating and really took in the reward of that feeling of like, holy cow, we did it. Like, look at all these people out here to celebrate like what we did for this town. It was
such a cool time to be in Tampa. The Lightning were winning. You guys won. Oh, it was just phenomenal.
So it was definitely a moment. That's for sure.
Hey everyone, life is full of transitions, and one of the toughest transitions for our Special Forces soldiers and their families is the transition from active duty to civilian life. The Green Beret Foundation's Next Ridgeline Transition Support exists to help Green Berets and their families navigate the VA disability claims process and more. For more information, visit greenberetfoundation.org/transition support. Prep for Impact is proudly brought to you by the Green Beret Foundation. The Green Beret Foundation takes a holistic approach to prioritize the well-being of Green Berets, their families, caregivers, and survivors. Green Beret Foundation's programs focus on nurturing the U.S. Army Special Forces community's mind, body, and spirit. Their 5 pillars of support work together to empower the Special Forces community to achieve their full potential in service to our country, living lives of honor, dignity, and purpose. Visit greenberetfoundation.org for more information.
That was incredible run. On the flip side of that, I was lucky enough. I had my wife and all 3 of our kids, and we were in the stadium for the next year against the Rams, right? And we were supposed to jump in that game. The paracommanders were supposed to jump in. And the week before, I guess out in Arizona, the Skycam had malfunctioned. And so they were concerned because the NFL is so tight with their playoffs. They were like, we're canceling all the pregame acts, right? So the Bucs were nice enough. They're like, hey, we already had tickets for you guys. We'll give you tickets. So I was like stoked, right? Get to go to the NFC Championship. We go up there, and it was cold for Tampa. I got all my little kids bundled up there, and y'all are getting run out the building at the beginning, right? Which was crazy because it was, it's so hard to defend a championship, but you guys had that team. That team was phenomenal, right? And I'll never forget, all of a sudden, you guys turn it around and we get to see one of those Tom Brady comebacks, right? I've heard that he sort of at that moment gave like one of those, hey, pull your head out of your ass type of a thing. Like, talk me through, because at that point it was one of those things, again, I, as a Falcons fan growing up, like 28-3 on the other side, I remember sitting there and we were like, man, these kids are freezing. Our kids are freezing. We're like, should we leave? Man, it's terrible. And one of my daughters was like, why would we leave? Like, we came to the game. And I was like, great. So we stayed and we're like, hey, we'll watch no matter what. We're never going to get into a championship game like this again. We're, free tickets, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like Brady and you guys just start. I mean, it looked like the complete opposite of the whole rest of the game. Like, talk me through that. And then ultimately the comeback that never was, because all of a sudden Cooper Kupp catches that ball and sucks the air out of the entire city. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, so that was a rough game, like emotional. Talk about emotional, like traumatizing game for
It's the wildest game I've ever seen.
Like, it was one of the wildest games I've ever been a part of. I joke around. I wish we would have just lost by 40 because it would have made it easier to get over it. But obviously I can't remember what the score was, but we were down like 4 scores, really pretty quick. Like, it was just ugly. We couldn't get anything going, and then all of a sudden it was just one of those. Well, we got nothing to lose. Like, let's go. Tom's doing his thing. Getting the troops riled up a little bit, but it was just like a whole decision. It's almost like when you're getting kicked in the face on the ground, like, you can either sit there and keep getting kicked in the face, or you can make a choice to get up and start fighting back. And I feel like as a team in that moment, we all just rallied around each other and decided, like, no, this isn't how it's going to happen. This isn't how this season is going to end. And it was just all of a sudden, it just, by taking that first step and that next step, then all of a sudden we're running, next thing we're sprinting, and we have that 2-minute, it was like a 4-minute drive to go tie the game.
Fournette scores.
And we're just, I mean, the script is completely turned, and we're just beating their head in.
It was wild.
And we go and score.
Loudest I've ever heard the stadium. We were going nuts, and there were so many people that had left and it was still louder than I've ever. I mean, it was just such it was improbable comeback.
It was a crazy. Like, I can just, it's giving me like the goosebumps. It's giving me the goosebumps. It's like making me mad in a good way. Like, these are I always talk about, like, you don't always remember like the victories.
Those are the ones that stick.
Like the ones that stick, or like the ones where you came up just this much short. But we score that touchdown, tie the game. There's like 45 or 50 seconds left in the game. I can't remember. It was, it wasn't much time left. And I'm like, we're gonna go into overtime. We're gonna get this ball, and we're gonna go score. And it's gonna
Brady is being Brady. It's nuts.
And so first down, with the defense, they get some pressure on the quarterback. They dump it. And clock's running. But how loud that stadium was! Like, I'll never forget the change. How the air in that stadium changed from going absolutely rowdy to that ball getting thrown up in the air. The crowd went completely silent, to Cooper catching the ball, to the Rams, the sound the Rams sideline made, because it went from completely silent to just this like random like screaming just and yelling.
A few people,
like you could hear on the other side. Like I'll never forget what that transition felt like in that sound, and it was. I remember just watching it. And I'm like, why? Why are they getting behind? Like, what? How did he get behind a defense like right now? And it was.
We were sharing the exact same moment at that point. So we were sitting up in the 200s, and Stafford's back was to us. Like, we're behind from that end zone. We're up high, and we're watching, defense facing us, offense going away. And I see him throw this ball, and I'm like, oh, Hail Mary, okay, whatever. And Cooper comes down with it, and it literally, like, I couldn't breathe. The entire stadium, it felt like the entire air got pulled to Orlando. Like, everyone and all of us just, like, no one could even speak. The entire stadium just went completely, because that was not it was a foregone conclusion. We were going to overtime. I've never seen anything that, like you said, the difference between how loud that place was is just
The only other experience I've ever had with that was the Mile High Miracle in Baltimore versus Denver
with Tebow, right?
When Baltimore ended up winning the Super Bowl in 2012, I was in the stands.
Nice.
And it was the same thing when Jacoby caught that ball.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I forget, it might have been Chris Harris. I can't remember who the DB was. Jumped too early and came down, and they ended up winning in overtime. Obviously, I grew up in Colorado, so I was a Broncos fan. And just being so mad. I remember, I tell this story, it's funny because when Tucker kicked the game-winning field goal, all I remember is Michael Orr sprinting down the middle of the field. And I just remember for whatever reason, because his movie had just came out. And, I'm like, you know what? F you, Michael Orr. Screw you,
Get
man.
your blind side.
I mean, that game is one of those games that there's probably 4 or 5 games that I've been a part of where there's certain aspects of that game that I'll never forget. Yeah. And those are the games that will always kind of stick with me, just especially because, that team, who we are that year, we win that game, we're winning the Super Bowl.
100%. I was just going to say the same thing. That team was so good.
I think we were so talented. I think we go and wipe the 49ers out, and then I think we blow Cincinnati out of the water. Yeah. So it was tough because I remember the next day coming in, and nobody wants to talk to the media after a loss like that. Sure. Yeah. And some of our media guys were scrambling. I'm like, I'll go talk to them. I'll go. Yeah. This time we're still on Zoom for some reason because of COVID and all that, so it wasn't in person. But I remember them asking, what was this team? Yeah. And it was just that team was special, man. Yeah. From the camaraderie in the locker room, that was a championship team. Yeah. And I firmly believe championship teams start with the locker room being such a tight knit group, where you're willing to go to war for each other, and go to fight. So that one hurt, and for me that whole game, I was going in to be an unrestricted free agent. Yeah. And for me, for the business side of that was this could have been my last game in a Tampa Bay uniform. Yeah. And so there's a lot of emotion that came, I spent my last 4 years here. I love it here. Yeah. But the business side of things is this could have been it. Yeah. I remember just walking off the field, just looking around, and, the fans were still being great and awesome and waving. And it was just this sucks. Might be it. This might be it. This might be the last time I walk off this field in a Bucs uniform. Yeah. And so there was the emotion of losing a game that way, on top of the business side of I might be somewhere else next year. Yeah. To just at that point, that was after my 9th year. You start after every year now. It's you start talking about retirement, thinking about retirement. Yeah. You take a couple months and you're like, okay, I'm feeling good. I think I got another one in me. So it was kind of a crazy, emotional roller coaster from losing the game to personal, career choices to just, every locker room is different every year. Sure. And not wanting to lose. You're never going to have that same. You're never going to have that same locker room again. And that's the NFL, man. It's crazy. It's just a continuous. Yeah. The NFL machine will just continually roll on. So, that was definitely one of those games. Looking back on it, I joke around about wishing we would just lost by 40 and would have made life a lot easier. Yeah. Emotionally.
But now that one's going to motivate you for the rest of your career.
That's a motivation. It's just a story, man. It's just
It was the craziest game I've ever been to in person. I
think it was we were down by 30 at some point, 31 or something like that, and we ended up coming back and tying it, and then that happened. But that was one of those games where you learn a lot more lessons from your losses than from your victories. So that was one of those games where you definitely learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah. Well, coming to the end of our time, I appreciate you coming on. There's so much that unites. That's one of the reasons that there's so much interaction between sort of elite special operations and college and pro sports because there's so many similarities. I think sometimes guys get lambasted in the Tom did for kind of using a war reference or whatever, but there are so many similarities of that tight-knit team that is going out there and you have to put it on the line for each other. So it's always interesting to be able to kind of, compare and contrast. I guess last question, right? Coming out of all of these different times of having to show resilience, everything from selling a dirt bike to being injured last year, coming back from the wild card game, you go into this season, right? It's the season after Tom, right? So just as big a difference between, and you're now one of the leaders, right? We were just having a transition event at Raymond James, and Brian Ford, the chief operating officer of the Buccaneers, mentioned, hey, this is the season after Tom, and we've got to all figure out how we rally and how we put that same level of professionalism into everything because he helped us see that winning culture, right? But it's sort of like for a lot of us, you have these mountaintop moments, and now all of a sudden it's the time after. For us, you transition. Like I just recently retired out, and it's like, okay, now it's my life after active duty. How do you go in as a leader now of this year's team? You guys are going to camp next week. How do you walk in there and try to instill, like, just because 12's not here doesn't mean we're not going to win the division. We're not going to win, the Super Bowl, all those things.
Yeah, I think it's just you just attack it.
Yeah.
The same way you've attacked it. For me, I've always had that mentality, that winning mentality,
Sure.
like, losing is unacceptable and this and that. And I think, obviously having, a guy like Tom around for the last 3 years, that can instill that kind of mindset into a lot of the guys in the locker room. So going into this year, I mean, to me, it's just keep on keeping on, like just keep the foot down and keep rolling. Cause Tom's gone, but guess what? Nobody else is coming to save us. Yeah. It's one of those deals. Like, we have all the excuses in the world right now because, we don't have an established quarterback. We don't have this. We don't have that. So what? Yeah. Show up to work, have that mentality that we're some bad mofos and go to work. Like that's all you can do. And I think that's kind of what Tom brought was that mentality of like, nobody cares. Yeah. Like, work harder. Work harder. Yeah. Shut up. Work harder. Yeah. And absolutely. I think that's just something that, has been instilled and I think is a fresh fire that's, helped a lot of the mid-aged guys in the locker room kind of take that transition of not just to be happy to be in a locker room. Because there's a lot of guys, like when I first got to Tampa, there was a lot of guys in the locker room and they're just happy to be on an NFL roster. Sure. Yeah. And, now they got that taste of that
that's feeling, not good enough anymore.
That feeling of success, beyond personal success. Personal success is a great thing. For me, I always tell guys, make as much money as you can. Yeah. I go, that's awesome. Do what you got to do to sign that big contract. Change your life, change your family's life. I go, but there's nothing more rewarding than a team coming together and being successful as a unit and winning games and winning a Super Bowl. That's that feeling. It's that old saying, you're chasing that dragon. You want that feeling back again. It's that feeling I still get every time I run out of the tunnel. It's just like hear the crowd going crazy like that. Yeah. Like once that feeling's gone, like it's probably about that time to start thinking about that transition. But the biggest thing with a lot of guys is, special forces, NFL, you get to the top of that mountain and then it's over. Yeah. And you start, you're on the descent of that tall peak. My business partner, same thing, played in the NFL for 4 years, had a really bad knee injury, was top of, and then boom, right down to the bottom. Well, what he did is he started building a business, and now we're on the top of a business here in Tampa. Yeah, we're awesome. Design build firm here in Tampa, and got to that top of the mountaintop. Well, guess what? Now it's time to go find another. Yeah, so next ridge line. Just keep going. Be successful. Some mountains you're going to get halfway up and the thing's going to crumble. And guess what? You just got to get back up on and start climbing the next mountain. So I think that's just kind of a challenge for guys is, we're off the mountain of, Tom Brady. Now it's time to climb the next mountain. It's just shut up and work.
No, man. And, I mean, and I appreciate it. And, I'll say, as evidenced by the things we talked about today, you're the right guy at the right time for them to lead them to that, right? Like, you've had these opportunities. Nothing's been given to you. You've had to work your way back to so many different times. And now this is just the next challenge where, next year or whatever, we're going to be talking and you're going to be like, yeah, post Tom, we did this and we got back to whatever it was. And so, man, I really appreciate it. And best of luck this year. I'm super excited to see you guys. I think, you got a great shot at it. And I think, like I said, you guys have you and some other vets in there that are going to be, great for the locker room. And, again, there's so many other things, we're going to talk about. You do a lot of nonprofit stuff with military charities and all that stuff. So at some point we'll have you back on. We'll talk some of that stuff. But, again, from me, I really appreciate you giving back to our community as far as the military community. I know you've been really, active with USAA and all of these other different charities, or USAA acknowledging that you've been active with a lot of the other ones. So appreciate that. And again, thanks for coming on and really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely appreciate you, man.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of Prep for Impact. I hope that you got as much out of that conversation as I did. It's awesome to be able to talk to somebody who's had so many ups and downs in their career and is still going at it each and every day and getting ready for this NFL season. If you haven't already, make sure wherever you're listening to this podcast that you go in and subscribe. That way you get automatic access to every time we drop one of these, which will be every couple of weeks, as well as check us out on Instagram at Prep for Impact Pod. Check the Green Beret Foundation out on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And then if you want to laugh, check us out over on Instagram at another SF meme page. If you've got the chance, if you're by chance watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, hit the notification bell so make sure that you know when every time we drop a new video. And please reach out to us. Reach out in the DMs if there's somebody that you want to hear from. If there's somebody you're interested in hearing us talk to, we're all ears to hear what you want from the audience perspective. So again, thanks for being on the ground floor of this new podcast, Prep for Impact, from the Green Beret Foundation.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Prep for Impact. Just as a reminder, everything you heard on this episode and every episode of Prep for Impact are just the opinions of the speakers, whether that's the host or the guest, and they're not the official position of either the Green Beret Foundation, their employers, the Department of Defense, or anyone else. And with that disclaimer in mind, I want to take a quick second to give you my opinion on the best way to prep for impact. Across my life, whether it's as a Green Beret or personally, I found no more secret weapon than to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, my Savior, and to walk his path rather than mine. And so if you're curious about that, or if you ever want to talk, my DMs are always open. Thanks for listening to Prep for Impact.